Hello, and welcome to my Power Wagon camper project. So I've been in the process of converting this old Fire Command vehicle that I bought at a government auction into an off-road camper. And when I received the truck, while it was in pretty good shape and been pretty well maintained, there were a few problem areas. One of those problem areas was the transfer case fluid. It was really dirty. So I have a few quarts of some Chrysler ATF Plus 4, which is a synthetic fluid. So today I'm going to start by changing out the fluid. I've also ordered a bunch of suspension components for the truck, and everything has arrived now. So I'm targeting about 2,500 pounds of additional weight, including the camper, all the equipment, and passengers. And most of that weight is going to be in the bed. So I'm going to need to upgrade those springs. This year model Power Wagon came with pretty soft leaf spring suspension in the back that was off-road tuned to allow for maximum articulation. And it just can't hold up as much weight as the base model Ram 2500. So when I'm done with the transfer case fluid, I'll start upgrading the rear springs with some helper springs made by Super Springs. Now, I know a lot of people are going to recommend I use airbags in the back, but believe me, I didn't make this decision lightly. I did a lot of research and consideration and think that the Super Springs helper springs are the right decision for me. Now, airbags can limit articulation off-road. They can even tear if they get overextended, and they have to be aired up and aired down. Now, the Super Springs, because they offer a progressive loading, they should offer a nice compliant ride when you're unloaded, but then offer support when you're loaded. Also, it's a super simple and very durable design and doesn't require any maintenance after install. Now, to help with the sway control and the increased dampening I'm going to need on a heavier vehicle, I've decided to go with Fox Performance 2.0 shocks on all four corners. Those are a high-pressure monotube design, and I've added those to my 2008 Jeep Wrangler, which is also a solid axle vehicle, and it really helped to reduce body roll and improve the overall handling characteristics. So I'm going to try this combination of the Super Spring helper springs in the back and Fox shocks on all four corners, and I'll go from there to see if I need any more tweaks or adjustments. So I'm changing the transfer case fluid. This is the skid plate that goes on the underneath of the transfer case. That's something interesting. Look at the dirt buildup there. I mean, that's down here. That's a good inch of dirt at least, maybe more. And you can see a big rock and a twig sitting in there. That's kind of par for the course. All the skid plates look something like this on the bottom. And then I've got the transfer case draining. There we are. Transfer case currently draining, and you can probably tell that that fluid is supposed to be red. It's not red. It's pretty darn black. I mean, it looks like old motor oil almost. And I don't think it's been changed before. There were no marks on the drain plug. There were marks on the fill plug, which leads me to believe that has been checked. The fluid level has been checked from time to time. They'll do that often at places like Jiffy Lube where you get your oil changed. But I don't think this fluid's ever been drained before, so it's a good thing we're doing it now. Okay, so this is the Super Spring helper spring that I'm installing. I have one on already. This is the second one that I'm going to install today. And this is the model number is SSA10. If you can see that, I don't know. But model number is SSA10. Now, this same spring fits Ram, Ford, and Chevy applications. The only difference is the mounting setup that you use. And on the website, there was no indications that this would necessarily work for the Power Wagon. So the Power Wagon has a different set of leaf springs than the standard Ram 2500. The difference is it's a taller stack. It's 7 leaves instead of the 3 or 4 that the Ram has, and the leaf springs are thinner, so you get much more compliant ride for off-road use. But that makes the spring perch a bit taller. So I was concerned as to whether or not this would work, and so I talked to Super Springs. They weren't sure either. I sent them pictures, and what they recommended was a slightly different mounting application. So the typical mounting system for this spring is called MTKT, I think, and they recommended the MXKT. And I think the only difference as far as I know is the length of this U-bolt. So this is a slightly longer U-bolt, so that that allows for an extended mounting application, right, to go over the taller springs that I have. And that does work, so I'll show that in a moment. This was definitely the right one. So if you're looking to install this on a Power Wagon, understand you have different springs, and so the MXKT mounting kit is the one to get for this application. So this spring is designed to add about 2,000 pounds of payload capacity to the rear of the vehicle. It's a progressive spring, so it's tapered on the ends, so that and it's thicker in the middle, of course, wider in the middle. So as the spring compresses out, you get progressively more resistance, essentially. The other interesting feature is this little roller. So this roller fits underneath your spring pack, and as this flattens out, this roller will essentially move. So that the idea is that when you're driving unloaded, this spring is not does not come into play. So you're essentially just using your normal spring pack. Now, with some caveats. So depending on the application and where you put this bolt here, you may have more preload or less preload. So the way I installed it, there's 3 bolts. If you put on the side here, you can see 3 mounting locations for the roller. So if you put it at the top, that's the highest setting, meaning the more heavier spring rate, and the bottom is the lower setting. I installed mine in the middle because I haven't used these before, so I wanted to start in the middle, see if I need to increase or decrease the spring rate. So anyway, using the center mounting hole here for the roller, there's essentially no preload. Now I noticed that some of the other applications, I saw one on YouTube using I think a Chevy 2500, and they had to put a C-clamp or a pry bar, using a pry bar to pull the spring down in order to clamp it to the existing spring pack. Which means that it would have some preload initially, which I think would make your ride a bit harsher when your vehicle's unloaded. But the way this thing installed in my application, there's no preload at all. It's just basically sitting there, and this spring's not going to come into play until I actually put weight into the bed. So So the first thing I need to do is remove the roller, and then this bracket just goes over the spring pack, and same on the other side, and then you put the bolt back in. So basically the helper spring just sits on top of the bracket, and I'll just replace the bolts on these clamps on the outside, just kind of snug them, and then I'll go ahead and clamp the spring to the bracket here, and then tighten everything up, and away we go. Now I'm just going to attach the bracket to the spring and tighten everything back up. Okay, so the bracket is attached. The spring's attached to the bracket, and the rollers are connected. I just need to make sure everything's tight and we're good to go. Okay, so here's what the end of the springs look like. That one's going toward the front of the vehicle. And let's see. And this one's going towards the rear of the vehicle. Since I have the tires off, I can show the front shocks now as well. So those have just got installed. So that's also Fox Performance 2.0 front shocks. And the front shock install was fairly straightforward. And the rear shocks also, the install for that was very straightforward. Just drop the spare tire and you have all the room in the world. I mean, I could even sit up in there. Here's the newly installed helper spring from Super Springs. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So this does work on the Power Wagon. If anyone was wondering and wanted to do a similar install, it does work, and was pretty simple to do, provided the right parts. Okay, so it's been another busy week on the truck. I changed out the transfer case fluid, I upgraded the suspension, I rotated the tires, and I also checked the brakes. As it turns out, the brakes look really good. In fact, it looks like they've just been replaced very recently. So I'm not going to touch those unless I find out that they're inadequate once I add the camper weight. I've also had a chance to drive the truck around a bit, so I thought I'd give you my inputs with regards to the suspension upgrade. So I will say that I don't have the camper, so I've only driven the truck unloaded so far, but I'm really impressed so far with what I see with regards to the suspension. It overall handles really nicely. You know, it goes over bumps like they don't exist. I'm able to go around tight corners really well, really easily with very minimal body roll, and that was a surprise considering the solid axles on this vehicle. I will say that the suspension feels a bit stiffer than before, but not too stiff. And I think the extra firmness will help in reducing the body sway once the camper is installed. Now, out on the highway, it was really nice and smooth, nice and stable, and really comfortable. But there is one section of highway that's really choppy. And I felt the truck felt a little harsher in that section of highway. But otherwise, I'm really happy with the way the suspension upgrade worked out. And I can't wait to get the camper installed to add the additional weight and see how it handles then. So that's about all I have for today. And as always, thank you for watching.